Are you building a business, feeling the stress of all the pressures on you, and hungry to learn from other entrepreneurs? Then you're in the right place. You're listening to But First Principles, where we highlight the principles you need to win both at work and at life. Let's dive in. All right. Well, I'm joined today by a man with an incredible name, Chadwick W. Blythe. Um, Sounds like a novel or something, but I guess you go by Chad.
Yeah, go by Chad or anybody. A lot of people in the industry call me Chadwick, but Chad's fine also for anybody.
Very cool. And you're a man of many talents. You have a finance background and some tech background.
A little bit, yeah.
Um, and so just like we were just chatting, and I would love to hear your story with the company you were with that was
Sure.
sold, and just like what you saw, because folks who are listening to my podcast would be entrepreneurs who would love to hear the story of how businesses are built
Hmm.
and how that they grow and scale, right?
Yep.
And it's really healthy to begin with the end in mind. Are you going to sell it? Are you going to
Hmm.
pass the business on? Are you going to liquidate assets? Right? Those are basically the three options. And you were part of a business that sold, so I'd love to hear that story in a nutshell.
Sure, absolutely. I when I went to undergrad at Radford University in Virginia,
Yeah.
did finance, I did my MBA at Virginia Tech, and then afterwards, and during that time, I did an internship for a financial services or financial planners in the area,
Hmm.
and kind of decided I wanted to go to that route. I ended up not becoming an advisor because I ended up answering an ad for a technology company that was just starting out, very, very tiny. And when I say we were in the sticks of Richmond, Virginia, we were, nowhere near Richmond, but in the sticks and tiny little company. And we
Was that Goochland or Powhatan or something like that?
Powhatan. Yeah,
Yeah.
Powhatan.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah.
And we decided that, well, not we decided, but our CEO had a software that he wanted to kind of develop and put out there. And I was the first non-technology hire for the company. And I was really hired to kind of build spreadsheets to test the software and to then eventually
Well, can I stop you there for a second?
yeah, please.
You told me a minute ago that like you showed up in a suit, and you ended
Oh
up
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
somebody
Well,
had put on a fishing.
I showed up in kind of a suit. Like I knew it was a little bit more casual, but I still couldn't get myself to like dress casual for the
Because
interview.
you're a financial advisor like
Right, right,
world, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Like I'm
So
just so
yeah.
used to everybody dressing up and stuff. And so I showed up for the interview. We had a good interview, and at the time the position was for it was in the technology department doing testing and stuff like that. So I was being interviewed by the chief technology officer. His name's Tony Leal, and Tony went fishing that morning, which he did most mornings. And so we spent a good portion of the interview in the kitchen cleaning the fish. And and I was like, man, this is awesome. Like everybody's wearing a short and t-shirts. In fact, in the back of the office, there was holes all over the wall for them playing hockey everywhere, and just nobody looked like they were doing anything. I was like, this is perfect, and I was like this is nice. And so it's but we did a lot, and we built good software, and I don't think that our CEO ever intended us to get the size that we were, but it ended up happening. So we started competing as a tiny little company with a different idea, and we started competing against I would say probably about four or five 800-pound gorillas in the industry. They were either kind of big themselves or owned by big companies. And there was a certain way that financial planning software was thought about at the time. And we were just kind of doing something different. So we ended up actually making traction and doing really well. I was the first support person for the company, but then became the first salesperson. And I was lucky to kind of not just make a few good friends in the industry that really taught me what to do, that I would call mentors,
Yeah.
but also kind of stumbled onto some ideas by accident that I still swear by today.
Hmm.
And
Can you share like because
yeah,
that to me, I'm super curious about
yeah,
that. Like in layman's terms as much as possible,
sure.
like what was going on in the industry and what was it that like what were you how were you thinking different? I love contrarian thinking outside of the
Yeah, me
box,
too.
right?
Me too. Right. Yep.
Yeah, right. So like what was it that you were thinking differently? And like what was the inspiration for like was it because you guys didn't really know anything? So you're just kind of like, well, why don't you do it this way? Or like how like not only what was the difference in thinking, but
Where
Yeah,
did
I
it
mean,
come from? Right.
it was even more simplistic than that. Like I didn't even really run anything by the CEO. He didn't really want me to. And he's just like, do whatever, do what you can do. And
And you were hired to like you said like build spreadsheets and like just kind
yeah,
of
so
figure
I was
out how
hired to,
the
yeah, exactly. So I was kind of in the first year there, first year or two, I was really spending most of my time building spreadsheets. When you're trying to, it's a pretty big spreadsheet when you're trying to test financial planning software, because really what you're saying is, hey, give me all your goals, give me all of your assets, and I'm going to run this scenario out
okay.
throughout the rest of your life and see what happens.
Ah, okay.
What does
Okay.
it look like if I run this out? And that's really
Okay,
what.
so calculate
Yeah.
like the trajectory of different investments and
Exactly.
that kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
thing. Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
All right.
Yep. And so we went about it in a slightly different way that was a little bit more user friendly. We were probably, if not the first, close to being the first web-based technology in our
Ah, okay.
industry. When I
Okay.
first started selling it, most of my users were still using either 14.4 or 28.8K modems.
Yeah,
And
right. Okay.
it is before people, had lines in their offices and stuff like that. And so, web-based was a little bit harder sell at that time. People didn't trust it as much either, especially in the financial services space.
And
And
did you know that it was going to catch on? Like what why was it web-based?
well, it was web-based because, well, ironically enough, it was web-based because they originally had a desktop cash flow or desktop version of the software, and they built a web-based version of it so that they could show people what they did.
Okay.
And that it was, we thought, oh, it's easier to talk to people about it if I can go to their offices and I can just say, hey, go to
Pull
this
it up.
website,
Yeah.
and pull it up. But then the whole industry kind of started transitioning a little bit, and it became more conducive for it to be web-based. And so we just kept it web-based. And again, I didn't make that decision, but our CEO, Bob Curtis, did.
Hmm.
And kept it web-based. And that ended up being a pretty, again, it was a hard sell in the first couple of years, but ended up being a huge advantage later on. And I can tell you, if you've
Yeah.
ever kind of worked for a technology company and your stuff is desktop, it's a, you can either make one change and kind of have all the changes made, or you can make a change, kind of build up all your changes because you're going to have to burn 100 and something CDs and send them out to people to update it. It was just a lot easier to be
Yeah.
web-based, significantly so. And then also being web-based, one thing we didn't take into account, and just being positive for us, is that web-based meant that we could integrate easier with other
Hmm.
technologies. Being desktop was limiting for trying to work with other technologies that were out there in the industry and share information back and forth with each other. Whereas web-based, that was much easier to do so, and that ended up
Sure.
being one of our huge factors. Was just I would probably say the first thing I did was I was like, oh, there's conferences. Maybe I should go to a conference. And the first conference I picked it because they have a technology discount, and it ended up being such a perfect target. The people there at the conference just ended up, and again, this is one of those accidental things where I chose it because of price, and it just ended up being a great association relationship for us, and it was very positive for us to take that. That relationship ended up being very positive for us. And then of course, while I'm at the conferences, I'm meeting all these other technologies, and we really benefited from the fact that our competitors really took them a long time to wake up to how important integrations were. I mean, integration isn't just about getting data in. You're creating a marketing array. You're
Hmm.
creating an array of other companies that are constantly talking about you.
Kind of
And
affiliate marketing in a certain sense.
well, and that's the thing though, is like we never did marketing. Like
Yeah.
we didn't do
Yeah.
emails, we didn't send things out to people. We showed up at conferences and that's about it. And
Got it.
and at the time that it was a different time then, like social media didn't exist. A lot of digital marketing strategy that's around now that I'm trying to kind of utilize in my existing
Hmm.
company,
Hmm.
we never even dreamt of existing at that point in time. So I really just kind of focused on going to conferences and so not only were we kind of a new company, but we were a 20-person company. And I would say by the time that we went from new to being considered the biggest in the world, we were only 25 people, and most of our competitors were in the hundreds in terms of
Yeah.
number of employees. They had more salespeople than we had in our entire company, but we were absolutely crushing them. And they
Well, can
just,
I?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
please.
Well, that's, I mean, so there's a number of things that, like, the title of the podcast, but first principles, right?
Right, yeah,
And so as you were talking, there's a number of things I would love to just like slow down for a second.
please do. Yeah,
And,
yeah,
with 2020 retrospect, kind of like if you could be, a coach or like a mentor or an
hmm
observer and be coaching you when you were younger and in the midst of that, right? Or
yep,
even the CEO, right? Bob, right?
yep,
Yep. So like pointing to some of the things that you guys did right, not really realizing it was what was right.
yep.
Um, so here's a couple things I would love to kind of pull out of this, and you tell me if this sounds right, right?
All right.
So first of all, you're the web-based thing. Um, for you as developers, like there was a convenience to it, right? And there
Yes.
was ease of access. And something I encourage my clients to do, and it's really kind of it's a first principle, or it's like a foundation, it's a fundamental,
Mhm.
is to look at your business model and the services that you provide or the products that you provide. Um, is there are there certain ones that are especially easy to deliver value with, right? They're like convenience factor or like ease of use will drive sales.
hmm
And if you can focus and develop and like deliver more value through an easier avenue, ultimately that's going to result in many fewer resources having to be behind it,
Yep.
right? And so like in terms of principles, like there's the principle there that like you guys didn't realize it, but like like
Well,
does
what
that
we
sound
didn't
right?
realize is that that brought us to, if I, use a kind of traditional principle type of terminology, it brought us into a blue ocean from a river,
Yeah,
meaning
right.
that in reality, probably the biggest thing that was helpful for us
Hmm.
was that we were different,
Yeah,
that there
right,
were
right, right.
existing a couple of, like I said, 4 or 5, 600-pound gorillas, but they all kind of did the same thing and were competing against each other. And so that the first advantage was that, it allowed us a little bit of, it allowed us to exposure among, like, so if I went to a conference, being different was very, very positive from that
Hmm.
respects.
Hmm.
Now, if the software that I work for, sold for hundreds of millions, it probably wouldn't even have sold for 50 million if it was just about going after independent advisors. But really, where being different very much helped was when we were going after institutional business, going
Sure.
after enterprise.
Yeah.
The one of the things that I kind of luckily stumbled onto was that the very audience that I was targeting, um, to the conferences for independent advisors, I found out very quickly that they were the validation mechanism for enterprise contracts. That really the enterprise procurement departments really had no way of knowing what is the best software out there.
What's good? Yeah, right.
They looked at all the articles and looked at the pundits that write for the independent advisors, and that's where they get their list of people to go after. And it took me a few years to kind of realize what was happening, but I realized that kind of going after the independents in the targets that we did, that we were going after the very people that lead the study groups, that are kind of the
Hmm.
the main information givers at conferences, and they were those targets just end up being a fantastic target for our people. And again, that was one of the things by accident, but it gave us the validation that when an institution was looking for something, we were a go-to, automatic go-to, that they would contact us, and kind of being able to compete against technology that either was already there in that institution, and or was just like a software already there at that institution, being
Hmm.
something completely different that did not exist before you. Even though it was the same audience, you're kind of having the same conversations. You're just going about it differently. And so,
Yeah.
I was able to kind of go into institutions that have 8,000, 10,000, 16,000 advisors, and to say, yes, I know you use XYZ, but you're probably only getting 3 or 4,000 of your advisors to actually touch it, even though you bought it for everybody. He goes, I will be able, if you want more planning done, having something different that appeals to a different age group or maybe appeals to a different type of advisor will be beneficial for you.
Yeah.
And that is really where the software really had its success is in
Hmm.
enterprise, and that's why it sold for so much. When they did sell, they sold to a ginormous company called InvestNet in our industry, and it was for $500 million, I think is what the sell was.
Yeah. Not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd be curious to know sort of the return on investment for by the CEO.
Well, that's the great
That
thing about it is
had to be
that it's
pretty.
our CEO was kind of independently wealthy before he started it, and so he
Okay.
didn't have to take investments from anybody or anything. He just and he when he hired me,
Built
like
this.
he knew that he was paying me for a few years to do things before he expected anything to come out of it, and I think we were all kind of surprised of how quickly we were able to have some success.
No, it's fantastic. So again, like um, going back to that story and how it
Yep.
grew, and so extracting principles, what you were articulating a few minutes ago. I mean, you could look at it from the perspective of marketing, right?
Mhm.
Um, the word synergy is maybe overused or kind of one of those buzzwords, right?
Sure.
But I mean, there's a reality to it that like 1 + 1 = 3.
Yep.
If you're connecting people is much more effective, like it networking people so that they're working together and playing off
Yeah.
of each other's,
And
strengths
and
and
you have to be willing to take that step, even though you think that there might be a little bit of pain point. So that the thing that really helped us was that, and I, so like I would meet these guys at conferences.
yeah.
So there are some of them, like there's a software in our space called Redtail. It was bought by Orion not that long ago. Even Orion itself, these were software that had no customers.
Hmm.
And when you have no customers, it's hard to get other technologies to integrate in with you.
Yeah, sure.
And,
Of
and
course.
even our technology departments, their attitude was, oh, these are new. We don't need to integrate in with these guys. They don't have any customers. And from sales perspective, we were as like, hey, unless you tell me this is difficult to do, we should be doing this with everybody we meet, no matter what. And I believe it's that attitude that was, hey, like you never know who's going to turn into the next big thing.
Yeah.
And if you have an attitude of that, you're willing to work with anybody that has the right attitude
Hmm.
and integrate in with them. Some of them are going to pay off handsomely for you, and that's one of the things that really helped us. Some softwares that we were the first to integrate in with end up becoming the biggest in their categories in our industry within not too long of a period of time, and all of us kind of remained friends and really helped each other out, and it's one of the big reasons why we did so well.
Yeah. So, okay, like kind of synergy there, but also like attracts like. And it sounds like, CEO, he was willing to take some risks.
Mhm.
He also, built a culture, and like you were part of a culture that
Sure,
was
yeah, yeah,
had to
there
be
very much
pretty
was a culture there.
exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So like that kind of culture, like, and again, you tell me like how
sure.
much this sounds true. Um, like having this culture that's like, I don't know, how would you describe the culture there? And do you even remember some of like the core value kind of
Oh
stuff that
yeah,
like
I
was
mean, I
meaningful?
can
Yeah.
tell you we were very, very different. In fact, I don't. This is kind of overplayed a little bit, but a lot of people will refer to us as kind of the Apple of our space because we were very like when you walked into our offices. And again, this is all our CEO. Like
Yeah.
I probably myself would be a little bit more dry than he was about it, but he's like have more fun. Like when we built our offices, everybody had their own office. We had a gym downstairs.
Mhm.
There's only 20 something of us in the company, but there was no lack of resources for us that was centered around having a good time.
Yeah.
And there was a huge focus on having fun and enjoying what you do. And I will admit, like I had a little sales team, and it was just a couple of us, but they at that time were my best friends in the world,
Yeah.
and when we weren't working together, we were hanging out together, and it was good because all those other companies we were meeting, it wasn't just me or it wasn't just one of us. They knew our team, and our team itself was, I would say almost pretty much my entire team are now heads of their own technologies somewhere else in the industry.
Mhm.
I just had a really, really good team none of us had any experience in it. Every single
Yeah,
person I
which is
hired, not a
yeah,
single person had any experience in our industry or any really experience doing sales.
like
And
fresh out of college kind of thing, like
yeah, yeah,
or like
exactly.
fresh out
Yeah,
of
yeah.
whatever.
Well,
Yeah.
one of my best employees I ever had, his name's Connor, and Connor is head of sales for another technology in our industry right now. But I hired him because when he was in college, he did a bunch of work in my yard, and I'm like, man, if that guy works and he just as good as he stacks wood, he'd be a great employee, and he was. He was a great employee.
That's great. I mean, so that's I'm an amateur psychologist, like like a
Mhm.
real interested in psychology, and that's I mean, coaching. So much of coaching is psychology, and
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
we are really at our best when when we're playing, right?
yeah, I
And
believe that.
not like children do it, and like when you're in love, you're basically playing with the person you're in love with like all the time. Like there's the
Hmm.
teasing, the flirting, and the like in
Yep.
the romantic stuff or whatever, like um and for in my own life, huge change. In fact, in many ways, the reason I became a coach is because I was doing all the right things. I was growing this organization that I was working for, um and miserable all the time because I was ambitious and just working hard and just grind, right?
Hmm.
Um, and when I learned from I actually got exposed to Tony Robbins and hired a Tony Robbins coach and helped me to really see that like I need to enjoy life, right?
Yep. Yep.
And that really does transform things. And it can be, especially when it's combined with work, it's a real discipline to learn to play because you you could there's always problems like there's always stuff that you could worry about,
Yeah. Agreed.
right?
Yeah. Very
Um,
much.
but when you can approach work and challenges and problems with a spirit of play, it changes the game. And
Yeah.
you
I agree.
attract different kind of people and right?
Yep.
So
I
that was the
100.
experience.
Yeah. I mean, it's from the very like I said, even when I went and interviewed, all I was the first non-developer, but all the developers are in the back of the building. Just they got a hockey stick and hockey
Yeah.
pucks, and they're just like putting
Yeah.
holes in the walls. And we would all carry our animals to the office, and uh, we
Animals? What like
oh yeah, we carry our dogs. Yeah, like
yeah, okay.
so it
Like
was the first
chipmunks
place
or
I'd ever worked
yeah.
for that allowed dogs in.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, I think we had a, technology guy once that trapped all the mice in the building and kept them as pets, but I think they made him stop that after a period of time. But
Understandable.
but yeah,
Okay.
but everybody would carry their dogs in, and that was really at the CEO.
Yeah.
Always had dogs, and he would bring his dogs in and encourage everybody to bring their dogs in, and we did,
That's awesome.
and it just made it for a really kind of good environment. Like he brought in chair massages every 2 weeks. That okay, it's like a little get a 15-minute
Yeah.
like chair massage.
Yeah.
We had pool tables and stuff like that downstairs, and it's we had a very nice building that when people came and visited us, even if they were coming from the corporate offices at Morgan Stanley, they were just kind of blown away by our offices and how fun it looked and how and Bob likes bright colors, and so it was very, very colorful.
Interesting.
It was kind of decorated a little bit, kind of like how preschool would be very colorful and the colors they would do. But it definitely came across good to people when they came out. It kind of looks. I was like, this place looks very creative,
Yeah.
and that was a very positive experience for anybody that came and visit us as well.
Yeah, so um, we're starting to run out of time because got to keep this to
Yeah, sure,
a
understand.
certain length. But I guess so. I just got a couple quick things that I'd like to ask you about
Sure, please.
before we wrap up. And so, in a nutshell, what when he got to a point where he could sell, right?
Hmm.
What did you see besides like the cultural things? And was there any other element of, and especially like in terms of hiring and building a
Hmm.
team,
Yep.
right? Because that's one of the biggest challenges when a company starts to grow is to maintain the culture and to hire well. Can
Yep.
you just speak to that for just a moment? Just like what you
Yeah,
saw
sure.
that seemed to
Yeah,
work
well, that
well.
was a big deal. It's when someone was getting hired, they usually talked to a lot of people in the company because it was considered, culture was considered to be incredibly important. And also, Bob, to his credit, was very vocal about, hey, I don't hire people just to let them go when things get tough. When the
Mhm.
2008 housing crisis hit,
Yeah.
our industry was going through some changes. We had a meeting. He's like, well, like nobody was like, we're in a good cash position. No one has to worry about their jobs. It's like he was completely against people having to be fired for any reason. Like, you did something really, really wrong
Yeah.
if you got let go. But it's yeah, the culture was that when you're there, you're family, and that the family's incredibly important to us, and your families are important to us. Like we all knew each other's spouses and children, and we all, we would hang out over the weekends. All of us in my younger years would get together and play poker every Friday nights at someone's house, and we all spent as much time together as we could, even outside the office. And to me, I always thought, that's building a very positive culture when everybody wants to spend all their time with everybody else. But it really did revolve around not necessarily the education, but hiring people with the right attitude. And those people really needed to interact and speak to a lot of people before they were hired,
Gotcha.
so that we
Okay.
we all kind of had sign off.
And that was the main thing in terms of the
I,
hiring
I I
process
think
was just
I
getting them
believe
to
so.
get
If I had to pick
yeah, really
something
good
that
sense.
was kind of like
Yeah.
a general rule of thumb, it was that, if I had a company of a bunch of people, my lesson learned is not to make this a unilateral decision,
Mhm.
but for everybody in the company. I mean, even, people in the support department, people in dev, people in sales, everybody would get kind of an opportunity to interact with those people, to make sure there's sign off on, all the departments in the company.
Very cool. And then and then we want to give a couple minutes at least to like what you're
Sure.
doing now because I mean I
Oh yeah,
love the aspiration that you got now and you're still very much in like sort of startup mode
yeah, very much. Yeah.
getting funding
Yep.
but what's your current venture what are you trying to do?
Same type of software, financial planning software. I would say if there's anything kind of different, traditional planning software is kind of geared towards retirees, people who are retiring or getting ready to
Hmm.
retire.
Hmm.
Also, it's kind of geared towards people of a certain affluency level. So
Hmm.
we're kind of stepping outside that box a little bit and we have developed software that is about being able to handle what we believe is the other 95% of America that advisors don't talk to now. And
Yeah.
so by having that software there, I'm trying to encourage advisors to develop monetization models that have them really trying to help everybody.
Hmm.
And like I said, we are very much in startup phase right now. I feel like we're just now kind of getting going.
Hmm.
But I'll be honest with you, I really do hope to kind of create the same atmosphere
Hmm.
that we had at the other company I work for called Money Guy Pro,
Yeah.
and I hope we're able to be as successful in making people happy with their jobs.
Yeah. I mean I love that idea too like I, Tony Robbins has been a big
Mhm.
influence on me, and he wrote a book a couple of years ago called Money Master the Game, and he, um, he's a guy who's really touched millions and millions of lives and really cares about people, and
Yep.
he, the book was basically he had access to some of the wealthiest people, the billionaires in the world, right? And I think it was like 15 of um, names that you would recognize of all the like major investors um, who like how do you invest? So I could educate people, Tony Robbins, could educate people, sort of democratize investing, right?
Yeah.
And basically, I mean, I read the book, and it's basically like just invest in index funds, the things that follow the stock
Yep.
market,
Yeah, that's what I
um,
would do. Yep.
right? I mean, and just don't touch it. That
Yep.
like, and one of the biggest things with money is like the discipline to actually do the
It
thing that's
is one of the
smart,
hardest things advisors
right?
have to do is get their clients to not take action when they emotionally want to. Definitely.
Exactly. Which which is funny because that's like exactly what I do with my coaching clients is to
I'm
help
sure.
them
Yeah.
to stay the course or to not take action or like make a more rational decision when there's a lot of emotion to it. You know, um, but I do think it's really like with technology we really are in a very cool place where we can democratize a lot of things. And we could have a whole other conversation about that, I'm
Yeah, no
sure.
doubt.
Right? Yeah. But so just like super cool you're doing that. And if I can support you in any way, I just I'd love to be able to. So all that said, what if people wanted to connect with you? Uh, well, actually, wait, before I
Mhm.
get that go there, is there anything else you want to say about that? I don't want to, is there anything else
Um,
worth mentioning?
I would say this, if I, one moment I'll never forget, and it made a huge impact on me.
Hmm.
My first year working for the company, I was convinced that I was going to go back to school. I was like, oh, I'm going to be here for a year or two. And I thought I might want to go back and get my PhD because I've always wanted to teach. And
Okay, cool.
the, but one thing I'll never forget is being at a conference, my very first conference I ever went to, and I was with Bob. And Bob made a comment that, you know, if he accomplishes anything, he wants to, grow me. Like it wasn't just me, it's everybody, but he
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
be a part of us growing as people and also reaching what we could do on our own and helping us from that perspective. And I really did see that, meaning that again, that's part of the attitude of we're not just hiring an employee, we're hiring a family member. And that showing and not just being words is one of the reasons why I stayed there for years, and which led to ultimately us being very successful and me being very successful in my career. I'm glad I did.
Hmm.
But the reason why is because of how much I felt that company cared about me.
Yeah.
And that was a very, very, when you're working a lot and you're just kind of going to the grind every day, that's a very, very big thing emotionally to be able to
Yeah.
kind of hang your hat on and feel good about.
Yeah. I mean, it can be soul crushing or it can be inspiring.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And kind of, making it fun and making it important. And also you're doing something that it helps when you're kind of putting out a product that you feel is helping people and ultimately is about helping people. And that feels good too.
Yeah, no, amen, dude. Yeah, I mean, I'm all about having a purpose and really about,
Yeah. It
service
does.
and
Yeah. It makes it
right.
awesome.
So, okay, well, so if people want to connect with you and where can they find you and who would you love to connect with?
Sure. Well, my company's name is Plan Tech Hub. So it's a hub of planning technology. It is a financial planning software, just what I've always done in my industry. And we have a website, plantechhub.com.
So
Um, yep.
plantechhub.com,
Yep.
right?
Plantechhub.com and
Cool.
Plantechhub. And and if any, obviously when it comes to who I'm going after, I like just meeting I like meeting in general people. Like honestly, I love meeting advisors who are trying to do pro bono work. I
Okay.
like meeting advisors. That's one of the things that our software does is that, traditional planning software is kind of this traditional audience of fluent people, whereas we
Hmm.
wanted to kind of build software advisors could also use with the less fortunate too.
Hmm.
Um, so I love meeting advisors that do pro bono stuff. I give my software for free to those individuals.
Hmm.
And I think that there's a kind of a revolution in getting ready to kind of go on in our industry. So I would love to meet any advisors that are kind of thinking of alternative ways of serving people.
Hmm.
And especially if it's serving people that we don't normally serve. I am all ears and I love to meet those individuals
Yeah,
and talk to them.
awesome. So to get in contact with you, go to the website and it's probably like a contact us form
Yeah,
somewhere.
there's a contact us. I'm Chad at plantechhub.com is
There you
also.
go.
And of
Yeah,
course, I'm
email.
all over LinkedIn.
Okay.
And on there as well. But outside of college football and my family, this is my favorite thing in the world to talk about. And so
Sure.
I welcome any conversations whatsoever, any questions because I love talking about it.
Awesome. Well, good. I really enjoyed talking about it. And,
I did
again,
too. Thanks. Yeah, and I appreciate the time, Colin. That's
yeah,
very much enjoyed the conversation.
cool, Chad. Great. And we'll be in touch. So cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks. Bye, everybody.